This is your annual warning about Call of Duty. I recently praised the gameplay of the Modern Warfare beta. It was a very positive video. I very much enjoyed it, but I spent the last 3 minutes of that video trying to temper excitement a bit by making it clear that we don't know what the game will be. And sure enough, just like that, days later, a Megaton dropped. I was flooded with comments I didn't expect to get. Things like everyone knows what they're paying for when they buy a Call of Duty game, or Call of Duty really isn't as bad as people say it is. They tell you there's going to be microtransactions, just don't buy them. And that's kind of scary to me, that a new status quo seems to already exist. So I did something simple. I sat down and took a look at how the last 3 Call of Duty games changed after they came out. How the game shifted after purchases were made, and I documented them. Better yet, how Modern Warfare already seems to be headed down a dark path. This is the result. Call of Duty World War II launched with loot boxes that fell out of the sky and onto war-torn beaches. Let's ignore the fact that it's a ridiculous proposition to begin with and move on to what that meant. This was Activision and Sledgehammer's first attempt to make opening loot boxes a social activity. This was a way to make people feel like spending money on loot boxes was a cool thing to do, a way to make others feel like they're missing out as their friends or total strangers earn rewards right in front of them. It was one of the scummiest loot box decisions I have ever seen, but worse yet, this was the beginning of the most dangerous trend we've seen in gaming in years. The monetization cycle. As far as I can tell, this is the creation of Activision. No other studio is taking this approach in the same way on a yearly basis, and there's a good reason why. It's disgusting. At launch, World War II prided itself on having cosmetic-only loot boxes. You could also earn everything. Slowly, after the game's release, this changed. Believe it or not, in 2019, that's right, this year, World War II is still introducing weapons to the game and now locking them entirely behind loot boxes. Not only violating the promises made to their community when the game launched, but using the game as a testbed to see what they can get away with in the future. And this only begun, again, after people paid for the game. But it's also meant to manipulate. See, if they wait until after the game launches, or even before the next one hits store shelves, when everyone gets upset about how far they've taken their scumminess, they can say, but look, this was already in the last game, in an attempt to gaslight you into submission. And this wasn't an isolated incident. Save for the loot boxes on the beach, this is almost the exact same cycle that the previous game, Infinite Warfare, went through. Launch with promises about what monetization would be, and then slowly make it worse and worse by introducing darker and darker loot boxes, locking things behind them you said you wouldn't, and turning the game into a gambling sim. But it would get significantly worse. Black Ops 4 literally turned into a different game after everyone made their purchases. Black Ops 4 launched with the promise of no loot boxes, but it did players one better. It launched with no microtransactions at all. When people paid $60 for their game, they got everything that they paid for free, right out of the box. There was no warning about the game's future, no expect this to come from the developer or Activision, and so the game was reviewed, given great scores, and existed that way for almost a month. This gave Activision the entire launch window of Black Ops 4 to make its initial sales, and then the monetization apocalypse. Activision, about a month after launch, would demonstrably change Black Ops 4. They'd introduce a new progression system, one that would be the foundation of your multiplayer experience, and tier it and time it so that they could maximize the push towards buying your way up it. It was a system that said to you, hey, you have 2 choices. You could spend every waking moment of free time playing the game, or you're going to miss out, which has become a status quo for the publisher. Again, a month after launch. But they didn't stop there. Just a few months after launch, they broke their initial promise of no loot boxes by, you guessed it, introducing loot boxes into the game with an update. But it was here where consumers really started to get screwed. Once they've introduced these loot boxes a couple months post-launch, they promised again that loot boxes would be cosmetic only. They never lock away weapons or items that affect gameplay. And then a couple months later, as recently as just a month or so ago, boom! There's weapons being locked behind loot crates in another attempt to stealthily and silently create a new status quo for them to take advantage of in future games. They even spent updates pushing their neutral, level playing field Blackout, the game's battle royale mode, into a state that feels very pay-to-win-ish. Once again, post-launch. This is the same cycle that World War II and Infinite Warfare went through in the 2 years prior. From Activision's perspective, the point of all of this is to get players to buy in day one, get reviewers to tout the game's successes, and for them to bite the bullet for the first few weeks from a monetary perspective. Then, once you've gotten the players in, start slowly gouging them for money once they've already dove into the false equivalency that is the sunken cost fallacy. Well, I've already bought the game, I've already spent my money, I know these things are bad, but I'm going to support them simply because I don't want to feel like I wasted $60. Or, worse yet, I'm going to engage with them so that I can feel like I'm getting the most for my original $60. And you know what's kind of remarkable? All of that stealthy post-launch shifting and changing actually was an attempt to create a new status quo, as I said before, and at least in the case of Call of Duty, Activision has actually kind of succeeded if the rumors about Modern Warfare are true. Now these rumors are tiered. One is not a rumor, and the next one, well, you better believe it. I've heard a lot of people defending Modern Warfare after it was revealed that an entire mode was locked away for a year as an exclusive for PS4 players. Those defending it don't seem to understand how big of a deal this really is. To begin with, the mode is a branch of the new Spec Ops mode in the game called Survival. It may sound new, but the reality is, it actually isn't. It's a reimagining of the extremely popular Modern Warfare 3 mode, and it's worth pointing out a lot of that popularity is in hindsight. The devs have tried to paint this mode as just 1%, a sliver of the game, it's no big deal, but it really isn't some new tiny offshoot as the devs have tried to paint it. This is an extremely exciting return of a mode that only lived a very short life to begin with. And even more importantly, is something that gamers have been asking for a while with Call of Duty. And this is huge because this announcement was made just a few weeks before the game launched, after millions of people locked in their pre-orders, and worse yet, this is a clear example of superfluous money creating extremely anti-consumer situations. Let us not forget this is a game that is crossplay for the first time ever, and yet it's already locking away modes for certain people on certain systems and PC. This sets a scary precedent for not just Call of Duty, but for games. What if companies were able to lock away modes, but then ask you to pay $5 for early access to them on other consoles? What if Activision is eventually able to present access to these modes, not as something you get for free on every system, but a privilege you can pay for to access early on all but one of them? Essentially a get it for free here mode. Locking this mode away is not only scummy, but it's another move to see just how far they can push the mechanics of marketing, and see just what they can get out of Call of Duty each year from a monetary perspective. But it does get worse. Remember all that talk earlier about Activision slowly creating a new status quo for Call of Duty? Yep, Modern Warfare appears to be it. Rumors Activision finally realized they can be a bit more brazen about these decisions. Reports are already out there that loot boxes will be in Modern Warfare. Thanks to a glitch, a couple players got a peek at an unlock screen in the Modern Warfare beta that, you guessed it, included supply drops. Yet we've already received the same promises we get every year, and there's been no word from anyone involved in the game as to whether or not they will be monetizing it in this loot box fashion. Once again, the developers and publisher are trying to force gamers into a position where they feel comfortable spending $60 while flying entirely blind. And yet, the Gaming Revolution, a leaked source that got the gunsmithing system and the replacement of the compass in the game spot on well before reveal, has now reported that once again, supply drops will have weapons locked behind them. This video exists because for the first time in years, we have credible looks at what Activision plans to do to players after they've spent their money. This video exists as a warning. For everything that Modern Warfare does great, at least in the beta, it hides something more sinister behind its darker corners. If these rumors are true, and you absolutely better believe that they are, and supply drops are back, and this time they'll be locking weapons behind them, I can assure you that one of two things will happen. Either one, they will not be there from day one. The game will launch without them, and then they'll exist in a month, or 2, or 3. Or they'll exist from day one, and Call of Duty's new status quo will be this terrible cycle that enveloped and engulfed it over the course of just a couple of years. I don't know which one is worse. I am not here to tell you not to purchase Modern Warfare. Again, it'd be disingenuous to pretend I was anything but totally enamored with the actual gameplay in the beta. But this was exactly what I was attempting to synthesize in the conclusion of that video. The very things that have come out about the game in the days after that video's release. What I'm here to do instead is simply give you the information, the facts about what these games have become year after year, and how they've attempted to manipulate their audience year after year, post-purchase, to lay out the trend so that you can better understand what to expect when Modern Warfare launches, and make an informed decision about whether or not the game it's likely to become is the game you want to spend $60 on for the few weeks the game is what we all want it to be. We always buy Call of Duty because, again, for a few fleeting days, we get exactly what we were promised. But it's no longer enough to make a purchase based on that time period. It's time to start looking ahead at what we think our money will become. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me for a decade, and you've pulled off the greatest heist in gaming. Well, guys, as always, I want to know what you guys think now. Are you interested at all in the mode that seems to be locked away? Does it matter to you all that much? What system are you going to play it on? And most importantly, what I want to know is, are you going to purchase this game at launch, or are you going to wait? Again, no one to shame anybody for buying Modern Warfare. The game itself appears to be great, and the single player appears to be a return to form. There's absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying what's on hand here. I know I have. And even more aware, especially in an industry known for doing it, of when we're being taken advantage of. Everybody should just be able to make an informed decision and know what they're buying. That should be the status quo of gaming. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, press that like button. If you are not yet done so, press subscribe. Put out more and more stuff each and every week. It comes when they come. So press subscribe so you don't miss that. For those of you that have missed it, I'll probably stop saying it after this video, but yes, I am back after being gone for like 2 months. And we are back to this channel's roots. It's just a place where you can come, hear about games, listen to some good music, kind of just relax, and, you know, interact with something you love in a way that's a little bit different. So you can expect more of that from here on out. Even the new stuff is going to be covered more like this and not like that whole me on camera for 20 minutes thing, just blathering. So yeah, expect that. And until next time, guys, I'm out.